Sarah, can I get one?
A touch unconventional, so please bear with me. Perhaps wrongly, I've tended to think of an invocation as a prayerful petition to the divine to meet us wherever we are. Join us, as it were, in this sacred space where over the next few moments we will attempt to memorialize and honor the life of a man whose name we don't know, whose murderers were not brought to justice. As I have contemplated this, I have found such an invitation to be profoundly naive. Not because the presence of God is unnecessary, because I do not believe that God is awaiting our invitation. God is already here. The story in the early chapters of the book of Genesis that has been in the forefront of my thinking all week. It's a story of two brothers, Cain and Abel, both of whom are contrasted by the nature of their work, by the content of their offerings to God, and as the story unfolds, by the favor that is or is not bestowed on these offerings by God. The familial comparisons, particularly the latter, becomes too much for the older brother Cain to bear, and in his jealous anger he reaches out and kills his brother. This injustice, however, is not unknown to God. The very soil provides its own invocation. Listen, God says to Cain, Abel's blood is crying out to me from the ground. As we gather this evening, soil continues to cry out. Brian Stevenson writes, in this soil there is the sweat of the enslaved. In the soil there is the blood of victims of racial violence and lynching. There are tears in the soil from all those who labored under the indignation and humiliation of segregation. As a white middle-class minister born and raised on the Eastern Shore, I know that all too often we are the ones who are not listening to these stories of the past. Stories of racial injustice and violence. Stories of our own complicity in these atrocities. Stories of the evils of white supremacy and systemic racism, none of which are buried too deep in the soil of our city. I'm thankful to be one voice among many this evening, for I realize that for some, maybe like myself, we need to be here to listen, to learn, to acknowledge our own wrongdoing. My introductory prayer this evening is not for God just to be present. My prayer, rather, is that this act of truth-telling, of memorializing and honoring and remembering as best as we can a life that because of racist hatred was snuffed out before the fullness of his time, because of white silence remains unknown to us. My prayer is that through our memorial and our symbolic gesture, gathering the soil that speaks in name, even though it is unknown to us. These acts might lead to a broader awareness and recognition of our community's sins, that they might provide an opportunity to reckon with past and also present injustices. They might lead to accountability of individuals and institutions, and that in some miraculous way, they might lead to healing. As Brian Stevenson notes, there is opportunity in the soil for new life, a chance to grow something hopeful and healing. So as we begin, I petition the God of justice, may this new life begin today. May something hopeful and healing begin to grow, and may we continue to respond to the invitation of the soul.
We will now have readings from a newspaper, the Baltimore Afro-American, that was the only actual recording of what we know at the time.
From the December 12th edition of the Baltimore Afro-American newspaper, with the lust for blood still running high in this mob-ridden community, the the dead body of an unidentified man was found badly mutilated and slashed early Sunday morning. There are many mysterious elements surrounding the man's death. The identity and finding of the man's body in College Avenue and Railroad Streets has caused beliefs and rumors that the man was attacked and fatally injured by a group of bloodthirsty whites who were out to get any unprotected colored person seen on the street Saturday night. It was learned that a telephone call was sent to police officials early Sunday morning, stating that the body of a man could be found at the location, which is near the dividing lines of the white and colored residential sections. The sender of the call refused to disclose his identity.
Examination of the body by Afro-American reporters showed the man's skull was fractured on the right side, and the entire left side of his face was also crushed. On the right side, there was a long, deep gash along the templar region, similar to a wound inflicted by a heavy, sharp instrument. Rigor mortis had set in, with the man's arms lifted as though to ward off a blow. No bullet wounds could be found on the body nor the head, which was covered with blood. The wound on the head was 2 inches deep and about 6 inches long. Near the body was half a ham, which was wrapped in brown paper, and a piece of bacon. It is believed that the man went to a store Saturday night after officials of the city had advised all colored citizens to stay off the street. It is believed that while he was marketing, he was set upon by a group of whites who badly wounded him and carried him to the spot where he was found. No witnesses to the crime could be found.
According to information, there was little blood at the intersection where he was found, which is a short distance from the NY and P&A Railroad, although the man's face and clothing showed that he bled freely. The man is about 35 years of age, 5 feet 7 inches tall, 160 pounds in weight, dark brown skin. He was dressed in overalls, jumper, and a brown khaki shirt with badly worn army shoes. Officials made an attempt to keep the finding of the man's body a secret. Later Sunday afternoon, 3 white men riding in a taxi cab made inquiries as to whether the body had been found or not. They approached a group of colored citizens at a corner adjacent to where the man's body was awaiting a coroner's inquest at the establishment of James Stewart. After questioning members of the group, the men got back into their taxi cab and hurried away. They made no attempt to visit the undertaking establishment or make inquiries of Mr. Stewart.
We'll now observe a minute of silence.
The north wind blows a suspect breeze through the tall bare limbs of the lynching tree. There's a silence hung in the air that is piercing as stone. This place may seem familiar, but it's just not our home. Resentment and bitterness hung like leaves on the once fertile limbs. of the lynching tree. Where there was hope, there is now despair. Where there was peace, death fills the air. There was no justice for those whose lives were ended tragically in this god-awful place. There is no justice for the descendants of former slaves whose lives were ended violently and without cause. When they took him away in the midnight hour, where was the law? A suspect wind blows over the brow of the man that clings to his life while hanging from the once barren limbs of the lynching tree. But who cares? And who will see?
Again, the words of James Baldwin. Love takes off the masks that we fear we cannot live without, and know we cannot live within. I use the word love here not merely in the personal sense, but as a state of being, or state of grace, not in the infantile American sense of being made happy, but the tough and universal sense of quest and daring and growth. This is difficult history to understand, but it is necessary to understand. I and others are often told that the past should be left to the past, that no one alive today took part in this, that talking about it sows only division, reaps only hate. But we can only bridge the divide by first admitting that it exists. Many of us want to maintain our innocence so badly, we would again turn towards violence in order to satisfy our fear. Love is stronger. Love is taking an honest look at ourselves, our community, and our shared history, and reconciling ourselves with the truth. Truth that this is who we were, and in many ways it is still who we are. Part of this unknown man's legacy is not just that he was lynched, but that his memory will serve as a piece of the mirror with which we can look at ourselves and ask, we cannot escape this history, try as we might, but can we choose to add something better to it? In her book, On the Courthouse Lawn, civil rights lawyer Sherilyn Ifill, writing about the process of truth and reconciliation as it continually occurs in Germany, South Africa, and Rwanda, and how it relates to lynchings on the eastern shore of Maryland, makes the point to highlight the criticism of this process, one that should not be ignored. How do we reconcile what wasn't together to begin with? She goes on to say that what communities that have experienced widespread violence, and many continue to experience, need to understand is that it is impossible to go back in time when there was no divide. Because division is a feature of America, not an anomaly. Our choice, if we are willing to make it, is not to try to create something old, but to create something new. And for that, I'd like to introduce Salisbury Mayor Jake Day.
Good evening, my friends. So, it's been a poetic night, so I hope you'll forgive a little prose. I think it was about 4 years and a day ago that we stood, James, Amber, many of us, just feet from where the tree where Matthew Williams sang from.
4 years in a day.
About 4 years in a day. And tonight we stand on the ground where, close to where man whose name we don't know lost his life. So I want to share a few things with you. And first, I do want to share with you why I'm hopeful. I'm standing out here with you, a group of Salisburyans, leaders, elected officials, people who have chosen to be cold together tonight. And normally, I look for a more diverse audience in our city. But I think it's okay. I am hopeful. Because those of us with white skin have an obligation and a responsibility to not make the mistakes of our forefathers. Secondly, I'm hopeful because this is a fairly young crowd. My apologies to those of us with a little gray. We're alive. This is a fairly young crowd. And that does give me hope that the future holds something better than the past. I want to share with you that I stand here tonight because of an obligation I feel as a human being, but also because years ago, when I participated in the Maryland lynching conference, one of the more commonly uttered phrases I heard was the mayor of Salisbury, from speakers who were referencing a person who held my position nearly a century ago. And the person with that position of authority chose to bury, to hide, to obfuscate, to ignore, to allow, to endorse hatred. And so I've got obligations too. The third thing I want to share is that tonight we're here to celebrate the nameless and also to recognize, as James shared, even the perpetrators were allowed to remain nameless. But as we move forward, the victims of hatred even the young man who was killed by that light pole in 2016, the second one from my right, will not remain nameless, nor will the people who stand in the way of rectifying the wrongs of the past. And I trust that you'll stand with me. The last thing I want to share is this. We've got a path forward. Part of correcting our sins of the past as a society are not just memorialization, not just recognition of history, but they're righting economic wrongs. They're righting institutional lynchings. The land that we're standing on today will be the first piece of ground that the city invests in our rail trail connecting the north end of our city and the south end of our city. Now that's not in and of itself any great victory, but it is an acknowledgement that this neighborhood and this ground matters as much as any. And the remainder of what I want to talk about with our path forward is this. The City of Salisbury Human Rights Advisory Committee recommended and voted unanimously to recommend that the city establish a lynching memorial task force, and that we use our power and authority to stand up said task force, to assign citizens to it, and to engage the public in determining the content, the location, and the design of that memorial. And tonight, I want to publicly declare that we are going to not only do that, but accept, without exception, every recommendation of that task force. We will get community involvement, because we recognize that process is part of healing as well. We will bring in community involvement. This will not be dictated upon high. This will be from the bottom up. All of us will have a voice. All of us will be listened to. All of us will be heard. And we will, in this city, build a memorial for those lives taken through violence and hatred decades, and in some cases, almost a century ago. Thank you to everyone for your time, for braving the cold, and James, thank you to you and your team for organizing this.
I want to thank Ms. Amber Green, Executive Director of Phoenix Youth Project, for sharing that phone. I forgot to introduce you at the beginning of that. It's time to build something new. Let's do it. Okay. Good night.